Hello, everyone. It's time for the other sideline. I'm joined by Ryan Young of Trojansports.com, USC's home on the Rivals.com network. Ryan, let's get right to it. We're going to talk quite a bit about the Trojans here. I think for everyone, one of the things that really sticks out is Drake London at wide receiver. I mean, he just seems to be an absolutely fantastic player. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so what I tell everyone when they ask about Drake London is the best part about watching him and his progression is that he takes every rep on the practice field like it's the fourth quarter of the Rose Bowl. There is never a moment on the field where he is not the most competitive guy, where he is not battling for every rep, where he's not locked in totally. There was one practice earlier this season where they had to take his helmet away because they wanted to give him a day off and rest, but they had to make sure he didn't have his helmet anywhere near him or he might go out on the field with it. And it translates to what we see on the field, where there was a great stat by PFF last week where he has 18 contested catches and no other player in the country has more than 10. That's Drake London. He battles for everything. His freshman year in 2019, he was one of four great receivers. They had Michael Pittman's in the NFL now, Amon-Ra St. Brown in the NFL, Tyler Vaughn's was on a practice squad. Last year, he was one of three guys. This year, it's just him. There's no other established, proven number two receiver. So his volume, his target count has gone way up. We knew it was going to, but it's even exceeded expectations on this end, where Kedon Slovis just gets to a point in the game where he has to make completions and it's going to Drake London. And more often than not, Drake is catching that ball. If there's one guy around him, two guys around him, we've seen three guys around him and him make the catch. Part of it is that he was a two-sport guy. He came into USC as a football, basketball player, and it wasn't just a side hobby. He genuinely did not know what his future was and thought he had a chance to be a pro in either sport. I talked to people around him as basketball coaches and trainers, and they really thought if he had focused on basketball, he had a real chance at a pro career in that sport. He came out his freshman year and was just so damn good in football, that he eventually had to give basketball up. But I think those skills translate to the field also, where he's just elite at high pointing the ball, at going up over anybody and catching the ball at the very peak. And it's that skill that's really set him apart. He's not a blazer. He rarely has great separation. He's almost always has a guy around him, but it just doesn't matter. His body control and his ability to high point and just compete for every ball is what's really made him elite and made him a true Bolitnikoff Award nominee.
It's amazing that teams haven't been able to take him completely away, too. I mean, a big guy like that who's also a great route runner. I just think he's going to be a professional football player and all-pro for a long time.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely.
We're going to hear his name a lot over the next 12 to 13 years. USC's quarterback situation, Kedon Slovis, obviously very talented, another guy high on some people's mock drafts. But we also saw Jackson Dart earlier in the year during the Washington State game. An injury update with Jackson Dart, and if he's healthy, would he be in the mix?
So interim coach Dante Williams has been very coy about injury stuff since he took over, almost to the point of being misleading each week. So we really can never put any stock in what he says. It was telling Tuesday's practice, Jackson Dart took most of the second team reps over the latter half of practice. And that was against the scout team. It wasn't all full speed. And early in practice, when they do their full speed run through, he was not the number two guy. It was fellow freshman Miller Moss. But he's definitely progressing. He's getting closer. He looks fine throwing the ball. He was even doing the agility drills, as they run back and forth. And so his knee's fine. Dante says he's not fully cleared yet. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know when that will happen. But if he's taking most of the second team reps over the last half of practice on the Tuesday of Notre Dame week, I got to think there's a chance he's available this week. I still think they go with Kedon Slovis. I mean, this is becoming a lost season. They're 3-3. They've not been competitive in their toughest games. They're not really in the Pac-12 race. You have a 3-year starter in Kedon Slovis who's playing for his NFL future right now. I just can't imagine that they would bench him and really undercut his future potential and his draft stock just to play a freshman in a kind of a lost season. But I know if you ask the fans, there's a huge part of the fan base that would love to see Jackson Dart. They got one glimpse of him against Washington State. He came off the bench. Kedon Slovis got knocked out the very first series. Dart comes in, his first college action, 391 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and he played half that game with a torn meniscus. The injury happened late in the first half, and he stayed in, adrenaline, played the game, really just breathed life into the downfield passing game. It was just one big play after another, so that's why fans are excited to see him. I think once they're totally confident that he's not at risk to damage that knee or have a setback, you'll see both guys play. You'll see Jackson come in for a series or two, but I just can't see them benching Kedon Slovis. He's played fine. He's not been the problem. Again, it goes back to the fact that for the last 2 years, he's had a deep and proven receiver core, and now he has Drake London and a bunch of guys who are trying to find their footing. And so it gets to a point where teams have been able to shut down the running game and made them one-dimensional. They fall behind big. They're chasing points now, and he's forcing the ball to Drake London because there's no one else he can depend on. So that's why his stats maybe aren't what they were the last 2 years, especially his freshman year. But he's still a capable quarterback, and offensive coordinator Graham Harrell reiterates every week that he has a lot of confidence in him. He likes the way he's throwing the ball. So I would expect it's Kedon Slovis. But at this point, I'm kind of thinking that Dart might be the number 2 guy this week.
Another Drake on the USC team, Drake Jackson on defense. Again, one of the best players in the country at his position. But what's the update there with his status for Saturday?
Yeah, he's been nicked up all season. It's been one thing after another. After the last home game 2 weeks ago, he left the Coliseum in a walking boot. But he was out there last week during the bye week. And then on Tuesday, he jogged out to practice looking totally fine, full pads. I didn't see him do a ton, but that's not unusual, for a Tuesday practice. I would expect he's fine. I'm sure he's probably playing through at least one or two maladies at this point, but he's really started to turn it on the last couple games. And if you look at his stats, his pressures are right on pace for where they've always been. He just wasn't finishing, and he finally kind of had a breakthrough and got a few sacks. And I think he's really, really feeling the pressure of he wants to leave after this year. He wants to be a draft guy. He wants to be a first-round guy, and he knows he has to deliver over these last 6 games. So I would be surprised if he's not out there for a full allotment of snaps.
USC ranks 93rd in the nation in rushing offense. They're coming off a bye, as is Notre Dame. I imagine that's something that the USC coaches tried to work on in this bye week. I mean, you mentioned how they've gotten too one-dimensional on offense. Is that really the biggest fix for this team going forward?
Well, this is actually a major improvement. They were 117th in the country last year in rushing.
Yeah.
They've improved their average by 33 yards per game. It was the focus of the whole offseason. They changed out their O-line coach mainly for that reason. I mean, they produced back-to-back first-round left tackles, and they fired their O-line coach because the run game was just dead. And if you're a USC fan and you're watching the Trojans team that can't run the ball, it's kind of demoralizing. So that was the whole focus the whole offseason. They brought in big transfers from Texas and TCU and Keontae Ingram and Darwin Barlow, and it has looked better. They have had more lanes to run through. Part of the reason why it's kind of gone to an all-out passing attack after halftime is the defense. They've fallen behind and gotten into big deficits where they've had to abandon it. Mm-hmm. There was at least one of those losses where they had a great first half rushing the ball, but they were down by so much they had to go to throwing the ball, and they couldn't keep it going. But balance is the key. This team has to be balanced. If they're not balanced and teams drop 8 in coverage and sell out against the pass, that's where Kedon Slovis is forcing balls to Drake London, and no one else is open, and they can't get anything going, and things bog down. So for this team to do well, they have to run the ball. They can run the ball. Really, aside from the Washington State game, that was the one game when they just got, for whatever reason, they just couldn't get anything going up front. Other than that, they've had lanes early in the game, but they can't fall behind by 2 and 3 touchdowns entering the third quarter and have to go out to all-out aerial attack.
All right, Ryan, I have to ask, is USC going to be taking the jeweled shillelagh back home to Los Angeles?
I can't imagine. I can't imagine. They've had 6 games. They've beaten up the teams they should have beat up. Colorado, which is the worst team in the Pac-12. Washington State was playing with a walk-on backup quarterback for most of that game, and San Jose State. So you can't, extrapolate any of those wins to future wins. And then the 3 games against better competition, they got blown out at home. Stanford, Oregon State, and Utah, all by 2 touchdowns or more at home. And they were down by at least 20 points entering the fourth quarter in all 3 of those games. So that, to me, is the team that I've seen this season. And on the road against the quality Notre Dame team, no, I don't see it happening. I just think this team's too flawed. I think it's mostly the defense. I think it's just not – we knew that there were question marks and issues on defense, but it's been worse at every spot than we thought. Really, none of the proven veterans have played up to expectations. Maybe Drake in the last few games, but other than that, it's just been a disappointment across the board. And for that reason, I can't put any confidence in them winning this game.
Will it be the 92nd meeting between Notre Dame and Southern California? Of course, they didn't play last year due to scheduling issues with COVID. So it's just fun to get this back going again. And I'm looking
Yes.
forward to watching the two Drakes and Kedon Slovis. I mean, I think that we're going to be hearing a lot about them in the spring leading into the NFL draft. So I did predict a Notre Dame victory. That score will come out later in the week. So I'm with you with that. So Ryan, thanks for your time, man. I hope all is well out in California, and we'll talk soon.
Always a pleasure, Greg. Thanks.